This episode was recorded a while ago. Though some of the information may have since been updated, the content remains timeless.
I started playing Fortnite at the beginning of quarantine, and these kids are, 10, 11, 12 years old. And the first thing that they asked me is, what skins did you buy? And, when I found NFTs in August, that was like my aha moment where I was like, oh, this is your skin on Twitter, on Discord, on Telegram, and they're verifiably scarce. Like, this is going to be a massive category.
You're listening to NFTeaseMe with Mikey Aveline, the show where I interview successful entrepreneurs, artist creators, and thought leaders pioneering the world of NFTs. So today we're talking about fashion and NFTs in an episode we're calling The Future of Fashion. Today I'm really happy to be joined by a special guest. So he's a Web3 influencer and the founder of the first ever crypto native luxury fashion house and one of the largest NFT collectors in the world today. He's also been recognized as one of the 50 most important people in NFTs by Fortune magazine. I'm delighted to welcome GMoney to the show.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm really good, thank you. I'm actually in London at the moment and the weather's taken a turn for the worse. So we're all here in our roll necks and freezing our butts off. Whereabouts are you located at the moment?
I'm currently in Puerto Rico, in sunny, hot Puerto Rico.
Don't just rub it in. That sounds amazing. Is that where you're based?
Yeah, that's where I'm based at the moment.
Amazing. And for those of you who don't know, who are viewing the screen right now, GMoney uses his CryptoPunk avatar, and GMoney is also the pseudonym he goes by in the Web3 space. GMoney, where does a big gun name like GMoney firstly come from?
It was a nickname that I got in high school. My name begins with a G, and growing up in suburban New York, not many people could pronounce my name, so I was called G Money, G Man, G Unit, G Baby, G just G, and so G Money was one that stuck because I was always very entrepreneurial even from a young age. So I always had a knack for making money.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into crypto.
I got into crypto in 2017. I mean, I initially heard about Bitcoin. I don't know the year, but Bitcoin was at $27 and I couldn't figure out how to buy it. And it went up to $1,000. And then they pulled all the way back to 200. And I was like, oh, that was it. That was the bubble. And then when I moved to Puerto Rico in early to mid 2017, I met some people that were trading some money, making some money trading Bitcoin. And I saw that the price was getting back above $1,000. And as a student of price action, I felt like this meant that something interesting was happening and that I should dig deeper. And so, I dug a little deeper. I found Ethereum. I caught the mid to late cycle of the ICO boom in 2017. And then in Q1 of 2018, I was like, oh, this tech is revolutionary. It's going to change the world, but it's still really early, right? When you take a look at the internet bubble, the dot-com bubble in the late 90s, right? And it's like, what ended up happening there was that the internet took about 10 years, right, to really get built the way that we know it today. And so to me at that time, I was like, all right, I'm going to sell whatever I have. And I'm going to come back in 5 to 7 years when the tech is starting to be built on. And, lo and behold, it really took 2 years for stuff to happen. And that's really, when I got back into the space in March of 2020, at the beginning of COVID, I really started going down the rabbit hole and relearning everything that I had missed over the course of those 2 years. And I ended up finding my way into NFTs in August of 2020.
Amazing. And was there an aha moment for you where you thought NFTs are just going to be huge within society?
Yeah, so it really happened before I knew what NFTs were. I started playing Fortnite at the beginning of quarantine, and I was playing with my friends. I start playing with their nephews, and these kids are, 10, 11, 12 years old. And the first thing that they asked me is, what skins did you buy? And I'm like, skins? they don't give me any special powers. I'm not spending any money on skins. And I realized right then and there, within a week or two, that I start spending a bunch of money on skins, that I'm like, that kid is 12 years old today. 10 years from now, he's going to be 22. He's going to have his own disposable income, and he's going to be totally okay with owning a purely digital asset. So I was like, at the time, there are no metaverse stocks, right? Like Roblox isn't public. Unity is not public. It's not necessarily a meme that anybody's talking about. And so I was like, there's this massive super cycle. Like I need to find a way to harness it. And, when I found NFTs in August, that was like my aha moment where I was like, oh, this is your skin on Twitter, on Discord, on Telegram, and they're verifiably scarce. Like this is going to be a massive category. And that's when I really started going down the rabbit hole. And it ended up culminating in me buying my CryptoPunk ape, and writing this Twitter thread on it, which ended up going viral on crypto Twitter. And that's really how, I guess GMoney, the NFT thought leader, the NFT person, was born.
Amazing. You were really a visionary to see that all the way back in 2020, that this was like going to be the future. And I can completely understand your way of thinking now with the excitement that these kids had over these skins. It makes total sense. So we're going to be talking about fashion. What is NFT fashion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bunch of different things, right? Like, I think what we see right now is a lot of people designing stuff for the metaverse, right? And that's great, right? Because I think as a designer, you're no longer limited by the laws of gravity, right? And so like you can design like really cool and amazing experiences that you can't in the real world. And I think that that's super interesting. Where I think we're at right now with fashion is, I thought about this when I first got into the NFT space. I wanted to start a fashion brand. That was the first thing that I wanted to do. But my thought process was that not many people are hanging out in the metaverse. So who's going to be buying clothes in the metaverse anytime soon? So that's why I was like, you know what, I'm going to hold off on it. It was really after I did my drop that I collaborated with on Adidas, that I was like, you know what? Now is the time to build out the fashion brand, right? To really build out the vision that I wanted to do and what I wanted to see personally as a consumer, right? And so, you have the metaverse fashion and people making digital wearables and doing these amazing, cool things with digital experiences. But, the majority of the world is still interacting in the real world. And so I wanted to start by building something for that world, of also helping people understand that we are in a world surrounded by NFTs, right? You're wearing a black shirt right now. I'm wearing a black shirt. We both are wearing shirts, but our shirts have different values, right? So like depending on the brand, depending on the wear and tear, is it stained? All these things determine the value of what our shirts are. That means that our shirts are non-fungible. We're literally wearing non-fungible tokens, right, on our body. And so to me, it's like when people sit here and they tell me that they don't understand what NFTs are, I'm like, you inherently do. You don't call them non-fungible things, right? So like ultimately over the course of time, we're probably going to get away from calling NFTs non-fungible tokens and calling them like, a shirt, right? Like a digital shirt or a digital avatar or skin or whatever it is, and not necessarily calling it an NFT. So to me, it's like I wanted to kind of build something to where people are and consumers are. And I wanted to do something, I wanted to like really solve for three things personally. I wanted to create an aesthetic that I would personally want to wear, that I would be proud to wear. So like I'm known as GMoney, but that doesn't necessarily mean I want to walk around with a big picture of my ape on my chest, right? That's not the aesthetic that I wear in my real life. And so I wanted to create an aesthetic that I'd want to do. Two, as a consumer, right? Anytime I spend a significant amount of money on anything, I want to know like how many of these are in existence, right? If I'm buying a Birkin, right, is this one of 10 or one of 10,000? I really don't know. So, as a consumer at verifiable scarcity. So that's why, in our products, we put NFC chips that are linked to the NFTs, which acts as proof of authenticity. So that I know as the end consumer, one, is this real? And then two, how many of them exist, right? And so that to me was the second thing I wanted to solve for. And the third, which I think is going to be the most interesting personally, is once you get the product out into the wild, then how do you create those network effects and how do you build community in the real world? And that to
Mm-hmm.
me is, right, the part of the process that we're starting to get to now, that the product is getting ready to be delivered and really starting to have fun on that aspect.
So let's take it back a step. So NFT fashion, it would consist of things like AR fashion, augmented reality fashion. So that would be sort of try on fashion. It would be things like metaverse fashion. So wearing your own clothes that you've purchased, digital clothes that you've purchased, and dressing your avatar, which is the digital character you'd use to move around in the metaverse, which is a virtual world. And then you have digitals. Essentially, you have a digital version and a physical, real life version of the same item. And then I think the final NFT fashion strand you have is video game fashion, which might be called wearables, a little bit like what you were talking about, skins, when you mentioned about playing with those kids back in 2020. So, from things like AR fashion, metaverse fashion, digitals, and video game wearables, what do you see as being the first fashion strand to become mainstream and why?
Yeah, so I first off, I don't like calling them physicals. I prefer network product. That's what I'm calling all of our physical digital garments, right? So I think network product is a little, I think it sounds better, but also it is more true to actually what they are. I do think that network product is probably the first thing to really blow up because ultimately, I mean, video games, right, is already happening, but you don't own the assets really, right? Like you can't transfer your Fortnite skins from their platform to another, so there's no interoperability there at the moment. Even though it is, a huge category already, right? It's tens of billions of dollars that's happening in revenue. But I do think that when you talk about it from the NFT side, I personally think that network product is kind of the first form factor that we see taking over, just because nobody's necessarily interacting in these metaverses just yet at scale, right? So you have such a small percentage of the world's population that are in these worlds. I think we're all in agreement that this is going to be a huge category in the future, but I think right now we're still in the really early stages of it.
So having a digital is like Nike, for example, dropping both a physical trainer and then a trainer you wear in the metaverse. I can see that definitely, like you said, being the first sort of thing to catch on, definitely. So tell us about your luxury fashion house, 9DCC. I'm saying it correctly, 9DCC.
Yeah, you are. That is I named the brand after the wallet that is the source of truth, right? So, we always talk about provenance on blockchain. And to me, it's like, okay, what is more crypto centric than creating a brand where literally the name of the wallet is the source of truth, where all the provenance comes from, right? And
So
so
you
that's
mean the
really
name of
why.
your digital wallet? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, so like basically, right, if you were to send me some crypto right now, and I were to copy and paste my wallet address to you, right? I always look at the last four digits of that address that I'm sending to you to make sure that I copy and pasted the whole thing. And so me personally, I know my wallets by the last four digits because it's like because I copy and paste them when people are sending me stuff. And so I'm like, yeah, so why don't we just name the brand the last four digits, right? Like it's really
Okay.
like the entire wallet, but the last four digits are ultimately the name of the brand, which is the source. It acts as the source of truth for all transactions.
It's very Web3.
That was the goal.
If you're interested in collecting NFTs, why not start with this podcast? This week's episode cover is brought to you by Surrealist NFT artist Designia and available as an NFT collectible for Series 1 of this podcast. Each collector receives a future access token to NFTeaseMe, from live events to meet and greets and deeper access into the minds of my guests. Check out NFTeaseMe on OpenSea and Rarible. Now back to the show. Okay, so what is the vision of 9DCC? I know you were talking about it a little bit before, but if you were to explain to a mainstream audience how a luxury fashion house that's crypto native like 9DCC is different from I don't know, a Dolce & Gabbana or a Nike? How is it different?
Well, outside of the design, I think it's just going to be the community building aspects, right? Is really just what I'm focused on. Where as a crypto native, I understand how these mechanisms work because I like interact with them every single day, right? I understand the network effect that we see. That the reason why we're sitting here talking about NFTs today is because they really exploded on the scene over the last year and a half, 2 years. And to me, I know I have a structural advantage in understanding how NFTs work and how to integrate them in what I think are like the coolest, most disruptive ways at semi at scale, in a quicker process than any legacy brand can.
Okay. And what was it out of all the industries that you could make a digital asset venture in that drew you to fashion?
I mean, fashion is just something that I've always been interested in. I had obviously the opportunity to kind of venture into whatever industry that I wanted to, but fashion is always one that always intrigued me, right? I think fashion is super individualistic, right? In the sense that you and I could probably go shop in the same store and come out with very different looks that speak to each of our personalities, and I think that that's always been really cool. But I also think that fashion just is also such a huge proponent of piece of culture, right? And how humans interact with each other. And I think it's super integral as also something that like I really love being a part of.
It's an identity,
Yep.
essentially. It's sort of like, I suppose, fashion in a digital sense is like an online flex almost. Your online persona, the way I see it, is that it's going to be more important in a few years, if not already, than your, real life persona. So I can definitely see the connection there and the way this is going in terms of fashion. And then I was just trying to think about fashion brands making their mark and brand identity a little bit like you were saying with 9DCC in both the real world and the digital world. I suppose in the real world, you have intellectual property for your fashion brand. And then correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, but in the digital world, you have NFTs, which is basically code on blockchain to verify or protect your um, products. Would that be the right way of thinking that having NFT fashion products is essentially a way of brands protecting themselves for the new digital age in the metaverse in terms of
Yeah, I mean, I
intellectual
really,
property?
I really don't know what brands are going to be using as their strategies for protecting their IP, but I'm very much a code is law type of thing, type of person where if you want to verify that something is real, like it's you have that provenance on chain to right, like how many designer bags are there that are fakes, right? That people you have to get an expert out there where it's like, okay, like the stitching on this bag is not congruent with like something that is a real one, or I'm sure that people that make the fakes are always trying to catch up to the real versions of it, and most people can't tell, but you have to be, if you're an expert you can tell, but most people get fooled. But so I think what the beauty and introduction of um, blockchain into this ecosystem is the fact is that you can verify that it's real pretty quickly, and that to me is like super important. That's one of the beautiful things that we've already seen that with art in NFT art and the provenance there, and I think we're just going to continue seeing that across all other categories.
You basically said it way better than I said it. That's exactly what I meant about verification and fakes and all that kind of thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
going back to your brand, the first digital garment that you sold and it sold out was the Iteration '01 t shirt, which is a
Yep.
luxury piece of digital clothing. So, how do customers go about buying that?
So you had to be a member of the Admit One community, and those were the only people that had access to it. And so we had a two window time frame where each Admit One member was guaranteed the ability to buy one if they wanted to. And then after that, it was only available to Admit One members that wanted to buy more than one. And we
Just
sold out in under 2 minutes.
oh my gosh. Wow. God, that's an achievement. How did that make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it was great, right? Like I'm very much in the process of, I'm going to use a sports analogy here, but I forgot who it was, but one of the greatest running backs of all time never used to do touchdown dances whenever he scored. And his reasoning for it was that he expected to score every single time he got the ball. So there was no necessary reason to celebrate because he scored a touchdown. He was just doing his job. And, I think I breathed a sigh of relief right after, we finished that. But then it's like, okay, get back to work because we have a lot more stuff to do. Like the things that I want to do, we haven't even really started on. And like, to me, it's like, those are the things that I'm really excited and to work on. So, to sell something out, like, isn't to me, that's not like changing the world, right? It just means that there's demand for the product. To me, what I really am interested on is really changing, the way brands interact with consumers and that whole consumer journey.
And just taking it back again, for our viewers and listeners, what is the Admit One community?
The Admit One community is my NFT community that I was very curated. I was handing out POAPs to people, which were NFTs to people as I met them over the prior year and a half when I met people. And those were the people that were allowed to mint this Admit One token for free, which reached a value of around, I think, 35,000 at its height. And I think currently is around 7 or 8,000, if I'm not mistaken. But that was something that I, was a curated list of people that I wanted to be part of my community, knowing that I would be building for plans that I had. And that's like your access to all things that I work on, whether it's in 90cc or potential collaborations with major brands that enter into the space. I always am having really interesting conversations with a lot of people. So Admit One is basically me creating that tokenized community that are very into the ideals that I want to achieve. I wrote a manifesto, which is located on my site, g.money, that people can read to understand what it is, how it is that I operate in this world, because I never want to release a roadmap. I will never be telling people about what's coming. Just my philosophy is just don't talk about what you're going to do, just do it and let the results speak for themselves.
And a POAP is stands for proof of attendance protocol for anyone listening who might be like, wait, what was that thing G just said? Like, so proof of attendance protocol. Okay, amazing. Yeah. So 9DCC aims to change the fashion landscape. Does digitizing assets and using blockchain help to democratize fashion?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think any amount of information you can give to consumers for sure like helps, right? Like, I think the more we live in a world where we understand that information is very, very valuable, no matter what that information is. And, the more access you can give more of your consumers to that information, the more you level that playing field. When you buy a new pair of Yeezys right now, you have, how many of those Yeezys exist? Is it 500 or is it 50,000? Right. And so it's like, when you have some sort of distributed ledger, then you can definitely take advantage. You can definitely democratize that access to all that information.
And then I suppose as well, and in terms of attending fashion shows, maybe more people can attend because it's in the metaverse and you don't have to physically be there. Would that be another way? I'm thinking of just making fashion more accessible to the masses. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I guess so, but like Instagram is already doing that, right? So it's like I wouldn't say that like doing a fashion show in the metaverse democratizes fashion, right? Like I think Instagram and social media has already done a really good job at democratizing fashion already. In the sense that like, I can be sitting in my place in Puerto Rico and I could be watching the runway that's happening in Paris, like as it's happening, right? I think technology has already done that.
Awesome. And in terms of the environment, is digital fashion going to be better for the environment than traditional fashion?
For sure. I mean, I think when you talk about the fashion industry, I think this is also a topic that people have been talking about a lot, is with regards to all the waste and, fast fashion and all this excess products that are made. How many billions of pieces are made every single year that are then discarded, worn for like a few weeks or a few times and then discarded because they're now out of style or whatever. So I do think with the introduction of digital fashion, right? If you're not making physical product, that is probably less of a footprint on the environment. I think, no applications are really being built on the Bitcoin layer, so you can't really use that argument. Ethereum is proof of stake. It does less. Pretty much every industry on the planet now affects the environment in a more negative way than Ethereum does. So I think all the people that are sitting there talking about how crypto is bad for the environment really just have lost that argument of a leg to stand on, because pretty much any industry has a much more energy spend than Ethereum, the Ethereum ecosystem does at this point.
So Web2 fashion, you go in, you just buy your fashion, like product, whatever it is. I suppose when you own an NFT, you become a part of a community. So Web3 fashion maybe continues that communication with the customer. Would that be something that Web3 helps, which maybe Web2 traditional fashion isn't doing so well of today?
Yeah, and that's literally one of the cases I'm trying to solve with 90cc, right? Is like, instead of the point of sale being the end of that relationship with the consumer, it's actually the beginning, right? And then exploring what that relationship looks like over time with the use of NFTs.
Mm-hmm. So that would be then through Discord communities or online communities where people chat more, or being part of certain communities like Admit One, where they have access.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of different tools, and there's new ones that are getting built every day in Web3. And, I'm not ready to necessarily talk about any of that just yet, but those are the avenues that I'm definitely exploring.
Awesome. GMoney, it's now the part of the show where we do a quick fire round of questions. So basically, you answer a series of questions and answer it with the first thing that comes into your head. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Favorite up and coming NFT artist or project?
I don't know. I like 90cc. That I honestly,
oh, that's like, the cop out.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I haven't necessarily spent that much time looking at other projects and collecting stuff, because I've just been heads down building. So I probably can't answer that question really well at this point.
We'll let you off for that one. It is a great project. What do you think the future of NFTs is going to be 5 years from now? Like, how do you envisage it?
I mean, I think NFTs are going to be disrupting every vertical on the planet. So, what made me super bullish on NFTs is that it's a structure that, I believe is going to be very prevalent in the future, in no matter what industry that you're in. So to me, like, your guess is as good as mine where we are in 5 years, but I think NFT token structure will definitely be integrated more and more into society with each and every passing day.
What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
What would I tell my 18-year-old self? Probably to slow down, that I don't need to achieve all my goals like tomorrow, and that, there's plenty of time, and just do the hard work, do what you need to do, and the success will come to you when it's time, right? It's like, I think when I was younger, I was always very results oriented, and now I'm probably more process oriented, where it's like, all I'm focused on is doing like the next right thing, and then ultimately the results will come over time.
What would 18-year-old G tell GMoney?
I mean, I think he'd be pretty pumped at kind of like how life has turned out, the experiences that I'm living. He'd probably give me a high five.
Amazing. What's the best job you've ever had?
I guess my current one, doing really cool things, right? Like pushing the boundaries of what the tech could do. Like, this is it. Like, this is, I wake up every morning. I don't have an alarm clock. I'm excited to jump out of bed and work on the things that I'm doing. Like, this is the hardest I've ever worked, and I'm not regretting any of it.
The dream. What's the worst job though you've ever had?
I don't really know. I guess like
There's got to be one. Maybe when you first
I've
started.
always been really entrepreneurial, so I've been like working for myself kind of like my entire life. I guess, you know, I don't really know. Like like everything I've had up until this point as experiences like prepared me for this point. And for the most part, I've been like my own boss for my entire career. I don't think I've ever really gotten a paycheck from anybody,
Wow.
like working for somebody else, really.
Wow. That's impressive. If you came with a warning label, what would it say?
I guess it would say fragile. I don't,
Frazzled.
you know, fragile. Yeah, you know, like have you ever seen A Christmas Story, where I think there was a lamp that came in and it says fragile, and the dad is like, oh, fragile, it must be French,
Oh,
or it must be Italian, and so I don't know. I think that's always been a pretty hilarious warning label.
fragile. Okay. All right. Got it. Got it. What is your biggest fear?
I guess my biggest fear is maybe not being able to accomplish the goals that I set myself out to do, and falling short of them.
Who's your hero?
I guess Steve Jobs is one of them. I think what he was able to do with tech and design, and I think integrate a bunch of different disciplines to really get that consumer, to build something that people want, I think is something that people have definitely learned from and now apply across different things, right? Where it's no longer like, oh, a shirt is just a shirt, right? There's a lot more that goes into it, and thoughts and cross-disciplinary expertise that goes into that.
That is it for this week. If you loved this episode and found it interesting, then tell your mates and give it a like or a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can also get involved with the community on socials, and don't forget to hashtag NFTeaseMe.